Welcome to the Ardan Labs podcast. My name is Bill Kennedy, and our special guest today is Gergely Brautigam. I love that name, Gergely. I'm sorry. That's an awesome name, dude. Your parents did well there.
Thank you.
Tell everybody where you're coming from.
I'm coming from Hungary and from Budapest. I was originally born in Oroszlány, which is 100 kilometers from Budapest, but moved into Budapest.
I love that city. I went to that city one time and I was like, why is nobody talking about this city? This is like the hidden gem of Europe, this city. I want to go back as a tourist for like a week. That's how much I loved that city.
Oh yeah, me too. As a tourist, it's amazing. There are a lot of very nice views. And we were overjoyed that it was featured in Black Widow quite extensively.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was. Okay, so this podcast is about you. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking about kind of your journey. But it helps if everybody gets a kind of a quick understanding of what you're doing right now today.
Okay, so currently I'm a Go developer at Weaveworks, and I'm working on the next best thing for Kubernetes. And I've been doing a lot of development in around cloud infrastructure and infrastructure provisioning and things like that, mostly in Go for the past 5 to 6 years or so. And before that, I was actually a test engineer for a very, very long time, for more than 10 years, I think. Yeah, that's quite an interesting journey to get from there to my current.
So are you like, you're coding like, I know how to start Kubernetes. I know how to deploy my services to Kubernetes, but I mean, there's a whole programming API around that, right? Are you doing a lot of that? Like you're writing controllers or all the other little things that you can kind of build into it?
Yes, I have been, but currently not so much. Currently more of a tooling part. But before that, I was writing operators, yes, to provision actual Kubernetes clusters on AWS, on GCP, on Google Cloud, and Azure, respectively. And that was quite fun.
I don't know if I'd say fun. Some of this stuff is pretty like, when I know I was reading some stuff here on it, I just feel like some of it is really abstracted away. Like, I don't know. But I guess it's what makes it powerful, right? Your ability to plug in and customize the environment.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a hassle, and it is a hassle mostly because of documentation and how things are still in flux, and the amazing speed at which Kubernetes just plows on and deprecates this and deprecates that in like the next release. And so sometimes when we wrote something in the next release, it wasn't working anymore, or it was working differently. And I'm like, okay, so we need to change now 2 or 3 services. And I'm like, all right, let's do that. So it is a constant battle, but I think if you look at the end result of what we have done at that point, it's quite amazing. All the extras that you can get in working with Kubernetes and writing these operators, it's amazing. I mean, I've been doing build engineering way before Kubernetes with Chef, Ansible, Puppet, and all of the configuration management tools, and they are amazing as well. But a lot of things that come bundled with Kubernetes, you had to write yourself. You had to deal with that yourself, like resources and server restarts and server management and all that. And Kubernetes just gave us the tools to do that by calling an API endpoint.
So how far away do you think we are before we never use the word Kubernetes again? Like, how many times do you use the word Linux, like in a week? Do you actually say it, or you have to configure? Like, almost, I'm going to say never for me, right? But I still have to know Kubernetes. I still have to know YAML service descriptions and all that stuff, right? I've been trying to figure out where that line is in the sand, and I think I have figured it out for the developer side of things. I never want to administer a Kubernetes environment, but at some point, even that should go away, right? So, how long do you think? How far out are we before the idea of Kubernetes existing is just a layer, and developers aren't even thinking about it anymore?
I think that's a very good question. I think it's still at least 10 years before that will like properly incorporate into things. And even then, it might still not be abstracted enough in order to disappear. I feel like there's still a lot of buttons that you need to press in order for that stuff to like actually work.
I know that the cloud providers have done a good job with UIs to, ask you things, but a lot of it still feels Kubernetes-ish. Like, I know why you're asking me
Mm,
that, and I know why you're asking me this, right? And at some level, that's good, but at some point, I just want to be able to say, you're asking me this, and I'm not tying it back to Kubernetes. I'm tying it to just that I have to deploy it, right? I mean, I'm already at a point where I know I'm constructing a Docker image, but I have doubts that that's really what's happening once I upload this stuff. Like, I'm sure it's all getting converted into something else, right? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I just trying to think when that happens. Hopefully, I'm retired by then, and it's not going to matter.
yeah, that's a
Sergey, you got
that's a
a
good
long time
point.
to go.
Yes, yes. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's a bit like hard. Yeah, thinking about all this and all the moving parts. I mean, Weaveworks is actually like what I'm working on right now. I hope that will make people go easier with Kubernetes. Like my brother also tried Kubernetes recently. He's a very old-fashioned developer who didn't really touch infrastructure up until now, where he wanted to deploy his own stuff into a Kubernetes cluster. And then he talked to me, and I'm like, bro, what is all this? Like, where do I even begin? What's happening? And like, all right, welcome to my world.
It took me a couple of years. I mean, honestly, to wrap my head around it, to even feel comfortable.
Yeah, me too. The best thing I did was reading Kubernetes Up and Running. That book really put it together for me, like really the architecture and where things like come from. I'm not saying I understood Kubernetes. No, 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 far from that. But it helped me a lot to internalize where things are happening and why. And that point made it easier to then go to the documentation of Kubernetes and try to find what I'm looking for because I understood what I'm actually looking for. And so, yeah, that reading that book, like 125 pages at that time, was really, really, really worth it.
It's interesting because just to interrupt real quick. I have that book. I bought it when it came out, and I read it, and it meant nothing to me. I'm wondering now if I sit down and read it after hearing you say that. I bet you light bulbs will go on for me now. I don't think it's one of those books that if you're completely clueless, like I was at the time, it makes sense. But maybe I'm going to read it now. Gary, you got me thinking that I think I'm going to have to sit and read that book now.
It just helped me to understand the reason and the moving parts. I'm not saying it helped me understand or even use Kubernetes properly. That came like much later while by building my own stuff and trying to deploy it and wrecking a couple dozen clusters in the process.
Oh, I mean, if you don't blow things up, you're not learning, man.
Right.
That's it. Just hopefully you're blowing up stuff that doesn't like 100% matter.
Yeah, I really hope so.
Oh, no, I destroyed the first computer my mom bought. It was like a $1,500 computer running DOS, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I wiped out a bunch of stuff on the root of the hard drive, and it wouldn't boot again. And I panicked for like 4 hours until I got it back up and running with the docks. Like, I broke this thing. It's super expensive, right? But what I learned in those 4 hours was, right. So back to your point, you gotta break some eggs, I guess.
Yeah, because then, right? So for example, I broke a cluster by not defining resource limits for a cron job, and it blew up completely, and it ate away all of the resources, and the rest of the services just died. So one time I wake up and none of my services work. I'm like, what happened? But that made me realize that okay, so setting resource limits is important. All right.
Yeah, but what I struggle with now is knowing where to look to figure out what is going on. Like,
Mm.
that's half my battle now. And I have some friends who I can just reach out. Where do I look for that? And they tell me, and I'm just like, so sometimes that's half the battle. All right, wait. Okay, so we gotta get this podcast going. We're gonna talk about all that again
All right.
near the end. But this is a story about you and your journey to how you've become this Kubernetes guru. And the first question that I love to ask everybody is to jump back into the time machine and think about that first experience, the first experience that pops in your head with you working on a computer. Like, just the first experience.
So that was my first would be working on a ZX spectrum back in the old days, figuring out how to output something on the terminal, on the screen.
How old are you?
I think I was 8 or 9-ish, something like that. It was really interesting because I grew up with my brother, who is 3 years older than me, and who pretty much hogged the computer, the only computer that we had. So it was more like a seeing and learning what my brother was doing and what he was trying to accomplish, and then trying the same once I actually had a bit of time on with the computer itself. And we had the privilege of owning like one. And I remember we bought these magazines where there was lines and lines and pages of code which you typed in line by line, and if you messed something up in the middle, you had to like, all right, this didn't do what it was supposed to do, so okay, let's go back to line number one and then compare.
We're talking about basic, right?
Yeah, oh
Basic
yeah,
programs.
basic.
Let me also just get a time frame. When did you say graduate high school or start? Yeah, I don't know if you call it high school. I don't remember what they call it in Europe, but like the high school equivalent in the U.S. When did you graduate grade school or high school?
The last school I went to.
Yeah, like what year was it when you finished all your grade schooling?
2004, I believe.
2004.
But that was including a 2-year like kind of like a certificate kind of thingy, which was all about computer science. Like 2 years. I don't have like a master's degree. I think you call it, no, wait, bachelor's.
Undergraduate, yeah. A 4-year
Yeah.
degree in the U.S. is the bachelor's, yeah.
So I don't have that because I wanted to work as early as possible. Like I wanted to go to work, and I had a friend who who did this 2-year training basically, which was all about computer science, math, databases, and history of computer science, operating systems, Linux, such just straight computer science.
Almost like a trade school for that, which you finished right after you finished all of your other kind of so 2004, you're kind of done with schooling there.
Yeah, but it's a longer story than that because I am really bad at schools. Like for a long time, I was pretty bad at schools because I kind of have this way of losing interest if something doesn't quite interest me, and And in school there was like a lot of things which did not interest me.
Yeah, so go back to when you're go back to like when you're 15, right? Because at least in the US, high school is like 15 or 14, 15, 16, 17 or 15 through 18 depending on when you start. Like those 4 years are really important years because this is when you're starting to really get a sense of what you think you want to do with your life at that point, right? So when you're like 15 through 17, 18, and you're doing that schooling, what is interesting you in school? What isn't interesting you in school? Where do you think, what do you, what are you thinking you're going to do even before you get into that computer course?
Yeah, that is a super great question, because actually I always knew I'm going to be a programmer. Like from, I don't know, from the first time I saw that ZX Spectrum, I knew I want to do this professionally. Like and so was my brother. And maybe my brother is one of my great influences, right? He was a computer scientist, a programmer, so I wanted to be a programmer as well. I didn't have a dad. Our dad like left us really early, and so he was the only one who I was looking up to. And but even regardless of him doing his stuff, I enjoyed computer science. And in Hungary, it's like you have 8 years of school, of general school, and then you have 4 to 6 years of the next higher school, and then you have the colleges and whatnot. And so in the first 8 years, I enjoyed math, physics, chemistry, biology, because my teachers were able to engage me, and I always enjoyed math. But regardless from that, and then computer science came in around 7th or 8th grade, and I excelled at that, but not because of my teacher, but because I really loved the subject. And my teacher was actually trying to get me expelled at some point, because he was a really bad teacher. But I changed all of the passwords on all of the machines, and we couldn't log in anymore. Because I obtained the administrator password like pretty easily, and I'm all right, let's do this. But yeah.
That's
But
seventh, eighth
luckily,
grade. I mean, you're like 13, 12, 13 years old
yes.
at that point. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No.
I want to jump back to that, but I was kind of curious about your brother. Did you have a relationship with your brother where if he was working on the computer and you came by, he told you to like get out of there, or would he let you sit there and work with you?
Nope. Unfortunately, we didn't quite have a really good relationship in the beginning. Eventually, it became a very good relationship, luckily. But in the beginning, we kind of weren't. We like fought a lot. I didn't intrude into his domain too much, and so yeah, no.
So you really had to wait. You had to wait for him to kind of leave to get any time on that computer.
Yes, yeah. I gotta hand it to him though that if I asked something about programming, he kind of did answer. So like I didn't understand for loops. This was later on. I didn't understand for loops very well, and he did explain them to me where I understood them then. So I, I gotta give credit for that.
Well, I think that's fair. Like he, that was his time, and he wanted his time, but he was there to answer questions, so that's good. Did you end up? You must have upgraded that computer in the house at some point. Did you each get your own computer prior to, say, that eighth grade?
Yeah, we had after that we had a Commodore 64, and then we had a Pentium at some point. One, two, three, four, all four. We went through all four. We usually got like a second hand something from somewhere. But at that point, I did get my own computer, and then started to work with it. However, there's also this interesting tale that I didn't end up coding for a long time, because I mostly enjoyed video games. So they kind of, when I had time I usually played video games.
So these computers, was your mom an influence in getting them, or you and your brother were able to kind of just hustle these computers in the house?
No, it was all my mom. It was she who bought like and got all of these together for us. She was really amazing in that, and she always encouraged us to like do that to learn that. She had good vision in this part that this is the future. So go and learn it, do it, because that's what's going to matter.
What did your mom do for work at the time then? Because
She's a
you're
teacher.
basically, she was a teacher. I mean, because you
She's
you
still a teacher.
and she's still working today as a teacher. What subjects does she teach?
Everything like math, chemistry, everything. She's a the first school.
Yeah, like
This 1 to 8
second.
years. So
So then you and your brother spent a lot of time alone too, then, right? Or
yeah,
I imagine then. I mean, I guess you went to school when she was teaching too. You all came home together, but yeah, I mean that's tough. Yeah, that's tough. Oh, let's go back to eighth grade. So you've actually you're finishing that first, you call that first um, year, and you're
hmm
getting in trouble already in computer science, breaking into changing passwords out to the point the teacher wants you out. Did you do any other crazy
yeah.
things in that class now that the teacher was just already against Gergi?
Yes, I remember that. What I used to do is I like all the assignments were really boring because at that point at that point I learned my own stuff. I wrote my own basic with a friend of mine. We tried to develop a game together, which came sort of far, but I was really bad at graphics, so I just wrote the the back code. But still, I had good understanding of basic and making the screen flicker, for example, or whatever. And all the assignments that the teacher gave us were like really boring to me, and so I used to just like write my own thing. And he used to come to me and he after he tried to get me fired or removed or expelled or whatever, and it didn't work. He kind of like had respect of some kind after that, and so he would always like just let me be, like just do my own stuff, and then like not even acknowledge or talk to me. Just give me a five. A five was like the highest grades, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I just kind of did my own thing in classes. And I remember that after the 8th grade, we have like this closing exam, which is like really huge. Like all of the 8 years before that, you have to fill out tests and answer questions and whatnot. And it turns and they always told us that there will be no test regarding computer science. The other kids who did not enjoy it as much as I did, like were very relieved that it didn't happen. But turns out it did.
Oh,
So I remember like going out to the table and writing down the code for all of them to copy.
and the teacher was
And
okay with you doing that?
like, but no one understood like coding in the class, like no one except for me, and the teacher like knew that, so he went like, all right, smoke break. And he walked out of the class. I wrote down the code, everyone copied it down, and then like
Wow.
cleared the board, and then
Wow.
he came back all done. It's like, yep, thanks.
That's brilliant. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's cool. That is
It was
cool.
really cool.
All right, so you allow everyone to pass their computer science section on the test. You now are going to the next level, right? Your ninth, 10th, 11th. And I mean, that's a much, is that a much different kind of schooling experience as well, right?
Yes, but mainly because I chose, like at that point, oh, it was a difficult time. A new subject came into the school near me, which I chose to go to, and this subject had a really awesome advertisement. Like they said, you are going to work with robotics. You are going to code robotics, like robotic hand movements and pneumatics, things with pistons and air. And you're gonna code that. And it was amazing. And microcontrollers. And I'm like, all right, sign me up. I want to do that.
Yeah, this has got to be like 1999, 2000. They had this stuff, huh?
Yeah, and it was super exciting. Turned out it's a major flop, and it was all about ISO standards, like learning standards and learning metallurgy, like in the way how metal you can test metal. Being a engineer around chemical testing facilities,
Ceramics.
yeah,
Yes,
ceramics and
ceramic
things like that.
engineering.
And I'm like, 5 years. I did 5 years of that. I almost dropped out. Like this is not something I want to do, but I gotta have a degree of sorts, and so
You couldn't leave right away? You couldn't just quit
it's a
and
bit.
go to another school?
Yeah, technically you could, but then you lose like in like 2 3 years or something like that, and you have to start from the beginning, including math, including all that stuff.
Oh my God, you must have been devastated. You must have
Yeah,
been
I
like, I'm in
was.
hell for the next four.
I was, and that's why I lost a year actually because of bad grades. I didn't care at all about any of that, and I had to redo a full year. I didn't care about history and any of the non-technical subjects. like and unfortunately, it was really difficult for me to learn. I have a very visual kind of way of learning, and I didn't, and neither my mother understood that at that time. And so it took me a long year to understand how I can actually learn, how I'm able to visualize knowledge, how I'm able to draw graphs and draw mind maps and things like that. That came a lot later, and only because of my need to like improve my knowledge about things. And this set me back like a long time. But I was doing my own stuff in the.
That's what I wanted to ask. Since you weren't doing schoolwork, obviously, what were you doing? Were you just like playing games? Were you what were you doing? Sports, music? What are you doing for those 4 years?
All of that. I was playing games. I was doing sports. I was for a long time doing kayak polo, which is basically water polo but in kayaks. So it's like a really like hard sport.
What? What do you do that out in the river? You can't be doing that in the
Yes,
pool.
yeah. In a river, you set up these huge um, caskets which you throw the ball in, and then you do that on a kayak. It's really on a canoe
Was that
more like.
even in the Olympics? I don't think I
No,
ever.
it's not. But it's a very fun sport.
It's
And
like
then
instead of horses, you're in
yes,
kayaks.
yes,
Was that okay? Was that part of the school's activity, or
no,
was that some external? What
yeah.
got you into that? What made you say like? What made you wake up one morning and go, "I'm gonna play kayak polo"?
I saw it on water. Like I used to run in circles in a huge river, and I saw a team playing it. I'm like, I want to do that, and I signed up, and I did it for like three
So
or
they
four
gave you the
years.
kayak? Did you
Yeah,
have to buy
yes.
your own?
No, they give you all the equipment.
That's a that's amazing. I want to see you walk home and say, "Mom, I'm a kayak polo player now." Like your mom must have been like, go back to your room. Leave me alone.
Yeah, what are you even talking about? And I played music for a long time, piano and guitar.
Can you still play those instruments? If I put you in front of piano, can you do anything?
No, not the piano, but I do. I can play the guitar still.
Yeah. All right. All right. All right. That's good.
At home, I was doing programming though. I was building a small game called Lavender, and it was just this tiny pixel thingy shooting at other pixel thingies. But it was
All in basic? Was basic?
yes, on Basic. Oh, and no, sorry, that was Pascal. That was Pascal.
How did you find Pascal at that point?
I think it was through my brother. One of the magazines, I think, came with the Pascal code, and then that's where we started to learn it.
Okay. So you fight through graduating this second level of school. However you do it, you graduate. And now you have to decide what's next. And you decided to go into this trade school
Yeah,
for software development. Was it software development, or was it like just about everything?
it was mostly software development. So, for example, at the end of the 2 years, I had a quasi diploma work where I had to defend that work, and I wrote a accounting system. And back at the time, I had like a side job in which we were doing the accounting for whole blocks of houses, like together, and that required certain accounting paperwork and things like that. And as I was thinking about what kind of software to write for my diploma, I started doing that at the half point of the second year. And I wrote it in C Sharp. We learned C Sharp at that time. And I wrote it for my mother, who was doing the most accounting. And she was helping me with basically the domain knowledge. She was explaining to me the domain knowledge on how to do accounting and the domain language to use in the software I was writing. So basically, she was my product owner, and that was my first real product, writing an accounting software.
But accounting for like personal finances. Accounting for personal finances?
No, for the whole house, the whole block of houses.
Yeah, I don't understand what that means.
It kind of back in the old days, these whole blocks of houses had their own separate money deposits and
Oh, like
money
an
and account.
association.
Yeah. Yes, kind of like an
Oh,
association. So we were doing the accounting for that association.
okay. You had a job with that association.
Yeah, and I helped my mother out in order to like print the invoices, to do the regular updates, to keep the track of the money, and so on and so forth. And I totally flopped it because at the day where I had to like defend my diploma, I I brought in a I brought in a CD, and they it was somehow scratched, and it didn't work. So they didn't saw my code, my program at all. They couldn't like, all right, so where's your code? I'm like, on the CD. I'm like, okay, let's try. So this doesn't work. Okay, so what now? And they gave me the option to like come back a year, like a year again, or get a two. Like this was so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the best. One is you're out. And they said, okay, we give you two because we can't see your code.
Wait, time out. You couldn't go home and produce another like CD and come back? That makes no sense.
Now that was that. These were the rules. Like that was the time of your point defending your stuff. And if you can't, then you're out.
But two is passing.
Well, I was passing, yeah, but like barely. I'm like, I don't care. At this point, I don't care. I passed. That's it. Okay, I take it. I take the two and then just leave. I could have gotten a 5 and passed with like flying colors, but I don't. I just want to be done with this and then go work.
So after that, you always made two CDs every time you were going to copy something.
Yes, and a USB stick. Several.
That's mind blowing to me to do that to somebody. You're that's my I can't even fathom the idea that I can't come back and oh my god, dude.
It was terrible, but
But you pass. You have your we always used to say in university that your GPA isn't on your diploma, so
yeah,
that was our
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
All right, so you get your diploma, right? You got the diploma. There's no GPA. There's no 2 on that diploma. It's a diploma. It looks the same as all the people that got a 5, right? Like, it's all good.
Yes.
So So now what happens? You finish school. What year is it now when you finish school? You said it was 2004.
Yeah, 2004.
2004. Okay. And how old are you at that point now? Now you're like 20? You'll be like 20, 18?
24, I think, or
24.
2020.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was 24.
So you're 24, it's 2004. You have your certificate. You're ready to enter the workforce. What are you doing?
So there was an ulterior reason for choosing that 2-year thingy, because that 2-year thingy had a connection to a software corporation called EPAM. At that point, it was Fathom Technologies, but later on it became EPAM. And I don't know if you know EPAM, but they are pretty large, like insane. At this point, I think they have over 20 something thousand workers around the globe. And they outsource people. So they are an outsourcing company. And they had a connection with this school saying everyone above an average of 4, like the grade of average of 4, and that's where the 2 comes. An average of 4 can get in and get an interview and can get hired and start working as a software developer. So I'm like, okay, I have now a 3.5 because of this 2. And I'm not getting in there. And a friend of mine, actually, who had a better grade than me, because he was paying attention, a better grade than me, got me into the interview by saying, dude, I got into the interview, just come, just tag along, like just come with me. I'm like, but like how? I mean, they know they only called you. Like, what am I supposed to do there? It's like, don't worry, just like sit in. Don't worry, just sit in. And that's what I did. And I freaking went to his interview and sat in. And they were like,
They
they
let
were,
you sit in during his interview?
yeah, yes, they were like, who's that guy? It's like, a friend of mine came with the interview. It's like, okay, all right, this thing done.
So you both got to interview at the same time, essentially.
Yeah, and at that point, it turns out that they didn't have a software development opening, but they had a tester, a test engineer opening. It's like, again, they said, take it or leave it. So you can like go away or work for us as testers in the first part and maybe transition to a software developer at a later point. I'm like, I'm not choosing, like, right? I'm not picky. Like, okay, tester, fine, I can automate stuff. I already like knew a little bit about that, and yeah, I joined.
How much did the job pay? How much did the job pay?
Oof, I
Do you remember? It
that's a
was
good
salary,
question.
right? Was it like 20,000 a year? Was it like, do you remember? I mean, you're just out of
Uh,
school, you're 24. It's okay if you don't. It's just
it's a good question. It, I think it was more around 50,000,
50.
15,000,
Oh, 15, 15,
15,
15.
yeah, 15.
Gotcha.
At that point,
Salary.
like in 2004, yeah, maybe even below that. Like, it wasn't great salary, but it was a salary. It was my first salary.
It was a job. It was your first job. It was better than what you had.
Yeah, it was a job, and it was in computer science. I was really happy, and then I met. I worked there for 10 years.
Okay, wait. You had to go home and tell your mom you're quitting the association. Like, was she must have been thrilled
Oh
that you
yeah,
went and got this job.
oh yeah. She really was. She really was happy for me that I got the job. I at that point that was in Budapest, and I was still living in Oroszlány, which was 100 kilometers from there, and we didn't have a car or anything like that. So I woke up at 5 a.m. to get to the bus. Every time for 4 years, I woke up at 5 a.m.
What?
go to the bus, go to Budapest, and then work until 6 p.m. ish, wait another hour to catch the next bus getting home, which was a 1.5 hour ride, get home at around 9:30, almost 10 p.m. ish, go to bed, wake up, do it again.
Yeah, you lost 4 hours of your life every day on a train. How much did the train cost then? The train must have costed you.
Luckily, the train was in compensated. So if you like traveled in from very far, then the company compensated your tickets, your monthly tickets.
But you and your buddies didn't think about getting an apartment, chipping in, sleeping on a couch at that point, something?
Yeah, that was, but that came much later. You have to remember that this is like this wasn't usual in Hungary to like get, and I didn't really like, all of my friends were already living in Budapest, so it was fine for them. They didn't really want an apartment, so for 4 years I did that until I got my first like enough money together to rent a space, like rent a house, room. Sorry, I rented a room which was like 15 to 20 square meters, and that's all, like with a shared bathroom. Yeah, a large closet. Yeah, like shared bathroom and kitchen with some family.
Okay. But you must have enjoyed this job at some level because, I mean, you did that for 4 years. Like, there must have been nights you didn't even go home. You must have slept in
Yes,
the office or
correct.
something, right? Like,
I slept in the office building below my desk.
I mean, that's so in those, okay, so you're, at least for those 4 years, you're still doing the QA testing, right?
I did it for 10 years, the QA testing. However, I gradually got more into the automation part and got into like more management roles and senior tester roles after like this amount of year.
So like 2014 gets you to about 10 years. So, I mean, that's a long time with one company. Did you see that same longevity from others that you had started with? Or were people doing 2 or 3 years and leaving? Because 10 years is a long time.
It's a lot, but you have to. So this is an outsourcing company. So I'm working for EPAM. However, I'm always working on a different project every 2 to 4 years. I'm working for a different client. So like I'm working for EPAM, but I'm working for different clients. So there were Americans, Russians, Indians, people from London, a English company, Finnish, and a Swiss company as well. So there were a lot of companies going around, a
Change.
lot of
Yeah,
projects.
you were
Yeah, a lot of
solving
change.
different problems. Okay, so that's not as bad as like being the same place. Yeah.
It still got repetitive. Like really, it got really repetitive because all of those we largely did the same thing. We solved the same thing, the same idea, the same automation, the same. All right, here is a Selenium. Use that in Chrome. We already know this. This works, and so on and so forth. We developed an in-house a testing framework, which I was part of, that that was written in Java, which we always used. Like it was still repetitive. It took a friend of mine after 10 years to get me out of that hamster wheel, get me out of that loop, like saying, dude, there is so much more in this world than doing this. Like you gotta come to London with me, like leave Hungary and come to London with me. At that point uh, I had a girlfriend in Budapest, but he convinced me to like move to London and work for Camelot. Camelot is the British lottery company who makes the British lottery.
Okay, stop. Before you get too far, I got some questions. Okay, I got questions. You establish a life for at least 6 years in Budapest, right? You have this. How long were you with this girl before you?
Only at that point, only recently came together. So 2 years, maybe.
2 years. So you have a relationship, you have a life, you've got a flat, you have friends, and did you ever feel you were on the hamster wheel and you were just happy with what you're doing, or did you start to have these feelings like maybe I need to explore?
I did start to have these feelings. At that point, I came in contact with James Marcus Bach, who is a brilliant tester. And I started to like listen to his videos, his podcasts, his whatever. Read his book, Buccaneer Scholar, and it all made sense to me, right? That there's more that you need to explore, that you need to widen your your view, and I felt like I'm losing the software engineer inside me. Like I was doing testing, but I was not doing development, which I always wanted. At some point, I wanted to switch to software development, but that opportunity, of course, never came. And then I got into testing too far up the chain, where where if I would have switched to software development, I would have started at the bottom, like also payment wise, also career wise, like right from the bottom. And I never dared to make that move until this friend of mine came and told me to move out to London, where the payment was a lot better.
Well, more expensive too.
Yes, but still, the payment was really bad. It was really good, and and I got an opportunity to be in London and to partake in things like code retreats or meetups, better meetups. Like in Budapest there was nothing of that sort. Budapest was still very laid back. Nobody came to us like people like Uncle Bob or James Marcus Bach or Martin Fowler. Nobody came to Budapest to like do a presentation, talk to us, teach us something. It was too far away. And so in London, I had a great opportunity to meet these people, to meet coders and become a better coder myself. And so yeah, I said yes.
So two things. One, I want to know. I want to be the fly on the wall when you tell your girl of 2 years that you're moving. Like, how did that go?
Actually, it went really well because she, at that point, she thought that everyone, like, she has another kid, that everyone would move out to London. That sadly didn't happen after 3 years. I was 3 years in London. That sadly did never happen, but it was always on the table. So we embraced this opportunity and also better pay.
You stayed together with her for another 3 years while you were in London. Were you traveling back and forth?
I'm actually married to her now.
Oh, so it all worked out in the end. I see.
Yes.
That's awesome. All right. So you went and she stayed in Hungary. You
Yep.
traveled back and forth, and then
Yep.
eventually she comes to London. I'm assuming, or maybe we're too far ahead. So let's not go there just yet. That's awesome. The other thing is now, where are you going to live in London? I mean, you need roommates. So what's the plan there?
Luckily, the company Camelot paid for the first month of rent for an apartment in Watford, and after that, the payment was so good that I actually could further afford living there. So I lived in a small apartment, a very small like studio apartment, but still own apartment, one main room with the kitchen and a small bedroom, and that was enough for myself alone.
How far out is that from London? That was that.
Watford, I think it's like 40-ish kilometer or maybe 30 something.
Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. But at that point, the workplace was in Watford. They moved
Oh,
eventually to London,
oh,
but
okay.
which was like kind of unexpected. Like, okay, so now I have to travel to London every day, which was actually like 45, 50 minutes, but still travel again.
Better than an hour and a half.
Yes, definitely. I didn't wake up at 5 a.m., that's for sure. And that in London was the time where it opened my eyes a lot more. And this friend of mine, Martin, who like engaged me, like basically kicked me to, dude, you're better than that. Do it. Like go, learn, do it. You can do it. And he was the one who actually like fired me up to be better or do more than I'm doing now. And gave me more tasks, more complicated programming challenges. We went to code retreats together. I did my Conway of Life, game of Conway's Game of Life challenge with the TDD, and all that, and it was super exciting. And that's when I got more into the programming side. And in London, I worked as a software engineer in test, but a software engineer finally. So I wrote code mostly for automation, but from time to time, I touched code for live
For the
problems.
product. For the
Yeah,
product.
for the
To fix it.
product. And that was the time where basically I got into build engineering. And
At Camelot.
at Camelot,
How long were you at Camelot? How long were you there?
3 years.
So from like 2014 to 2017.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, our infrastructure was like clobbered together with scripts, right?
Whose
Like,
isn't clobbered together
whose
with
isn't?
scripts?
Yeah, clobbered together with scripts.
Bubblegum, rubber bands, and scripts.
Yes. And there was this guy who was like a really intelligent person, but he inherited this infrastructure and he had like no stakes in it. Like he didn't have passion to improve it. He just like kept it going. And at some point he said like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, and then quit. And I'm like, okay, so who's gonna do our infrastructure? And I remember exactly, I saw a ticket that that one of our servers was constantly rebooting, and something was not working with the health check on that service. The health check being a freaking bash script, which was like periodically pinging something in a cron job, and it was awful. It was only living on that server, right? There was like every server had a different kind of health check script, and and I remember that it was so annoying that I said, all right, guys, I'm gonna do it. Nobody was willing to pick it up. Like, I'm going to do this. I feel adventurous. Like at that point, my imposter syndrome thingy kicked in, and what I do with that is whenever I feel inadequate, I try to identify why. I try to identify the core reason of feeling inadequate, like feeling out of place. Am I just lucky? Am I just what am I even doing here? And if I feel like, okay, so this is the thing that triggered it, like I don't understand this at all, how can I get payment for this? Then if I identify that thing, I will write it down. I will write it down in a book and try to be the best at it from everyone. Like, okay, now I'm going to be a freaking professional in this thing that I do not understand at all at this time. So I said, okay, I'm afraid of this, so let's do it.
Wow. That's when did that develop? When did that mindset develop? Because this is kind of the first time I'm hearing you say this, right? I mean, it wasn't happening when you were at first or second level school. I'm not sure it even happened when you were in computers. Is this something that you learned when you were working in that first job, or something that you developed in this second job?
It was something I developed in the second job. So before that, the testing stuff and even the automation was kind of boring and easy, right? It didn't really challenge me. It was, from time to time there were some challenging tasks, but it was nothing I didn't really understand or I didn't really already have experience with. So when Martin came along and kicked me to like, dude, there's more than this, and showed me like the first test or the first assignment or something like that, and I said that, whoa, what is this? Like, I don't even understand the question. and that's when he said to me that, all right, read it again slowly and identify what you don't understand from it. And that's when I kind of started to chop up things to try to understand them. And also James, the Buccaneer scholar, had a really good passage from James Marcus that said that you are your worst enemy. And basically, your mind, if you set your mind to something, to some task, then there is nothing you cannot understand and do given time. And that clicked with me. Like everyone's trying to be hasty, like trying to speed things up, like you have to get this out of the door now, you have to get, but I need time to like sit down, analyze and understand the problem domain, understand what this is about. And I don't really like hastening things up. And that's when I sort of understood that this is how I am, this is how I do it, and started to write it down. Writing, however, is an integral part of me being me. Like I always write, I always have a book with me, I always write, I always like write a ton, thoughts, ideas. Even if I have a task, I write down the task in my own words. And if I cannot write it down in my own words, I know I do not understand it properly, and I will try again, and again until I can write it down in my own words. So yeah, this is when I understood I need to do this in order to overcome my like blocking. Like I'm afraid of that stuff, so I need to do it.
Is Martin still in your life? Because he sounds like he's one of these people that was a major influence at that time to get you where you are today. Is he still in your life?
Unfortunately, no. He's kind of still there from time to time, but I moved back home, and he stayed in London, and then we sort of drifted apart. But other people are still in my life from London, like three guys, uh, Isaac, Adrian, and James. They are my best buddies. One of the like four people I'm really best buddies with. They influenced me a lot too, especially Adrian, another tester on my team, who we did a Python course with. Like, dude, let's do a Python course. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. That course, like in Coursera, really helped develop myself, develop my understanding, and develop the way I do things. And I did it with him, and that also helped. Like this comradeship or whatever, like really helped. And then when I got into build engineering, he was also the one encouraging me, like, dude, you should totally do this. Like this ticket has your name written on it. And I'm like, what? I don't understand anything of that.
So did you ended up solving that problem then? You fixed the script, you fixed the service, and you started, did that turn into a snowball at Camelot to start fixing just about everything you could get your hands on?
Yes, that was the first thing that made me go down the build engineer, cloud engineer, and later on infrastructure engineer path that I'm on now currently, and I really love. That first ticket, I took it apart. I took the script apart, line by line. I tried to understand it, and I translated it into by then Puppet. So I put it into Puppet immediately. Like, okay, this is. I knew that this is really wrong. That there's a script like this, and I tried to do. I tried to improve it, and by trying to improve it, it really made me understand it better. And this is when I started to go down this path. This was by the end of my last year at Camelot, where we talked with my now wife that, okay, so I need to move home because our relationship is starting to strain, and I'm starting to lose a lot of money by traveling back and forth from London to Budapest. And I needed to make a choice between her or London. And I obviously chose her.
You really loved her. I mean, 3 years, man.
Yeah,
You didn't want to let her go. She obviously
yes,
wasn't coming to London. So
yeah.
so that's interesting. So you decide that she's more important and you're going to move back to Hungary, but you got to find a job there. So what? So now it's like 2018. What do you do?
That turned out to be a really good choice for me, because when I moved back to Budapest, I didn't choose a tester role. Like, all right, I don't want to work as a tester ever again. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but because I want to
You
do
did it. You've done
development. I
it
want
for
to
over
do
a decade.
infrastructure.
I
Yeah,
mean, you're done.
yeah,
Like, there's nothing more to do
it's
there.
enough. Yeah, and that's when I went to Chemaxon, a biology. They were building software for medical purposes, like chemists and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I no understanding of how that works, but I have a good understanding now of Ansible, Chef, Puppet, Packer. At that point, Packer came into view from HashiCorp, and I'm like, all right, I understand that stuff now. I want to do that. And they were looking for a build engineer. I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure.
They didn't call it build. They didn't call it a build engineer at the time, though, right? I mean,
Yeah,
2018.
they
They
did.
did.
They did call it a
Okay.
build engineer. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, infrastructure engineer or something like that, but it was a build engineer. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, I did this for like half a year. I know nothing about this. And that's when I said, all right, I gotta do it. I'm afraid I've gotta do it.
So you applied. You applied and interviewed.
Yeah, I applied and interviewed and I got the job.
I love this idea. Dude, I love this idea of, I know I'm afraid, so now I'm gonna do it. Like, it's that's that is, I have these moments where I'm feeling afraid and frustrated. It happened to me this week, and I was ready to give up. And then I woke up in the morning. I said, I'm removing everything I did, and I'm starting over. I'm not gonna let this beat me. It's kind of that same thing, right? Like, I'm not gonna let this beat me.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, all right, so I have to do this. I really enjoy this. I have to do this. And yeah, I got the job, which then again my imposter syndrome, like, oh my god, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, oh my god, I'm dead.
So now you move back. Do you move in with you move in with your girl at that point,
Yes,
right?
moved in.
That must have been super interesting, right? Because you've
Yes,
been living on your own for the most part. I mean, you spend a weekend or something, but living with somebody's a whole nother bag of worms.
but it was a bicycle ride away from the workplace, so win-win.
No, rent just got cheaper too. So
Yeah.
win 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 win.
Indeed. So I did that for a lot of for like 9 months, I believe. Yeah, 9 months. And that was the point where I was discovered by a headhunter who said, "Dude, I have this amazing opportunity for you to work with Go." And because at Chemaxon I got into writing Go, that's where I first met Go. That was like 5-6 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, 18. Well, about 4 years ago. Yeah.
And I really fell in love with the language. Like it rekindled my love for coding. Like at that point, I did for more than a decade like Java, and I was burnt out. I was burnt out of enterprise software and burnt out of Spring and attributes and annotations and all that crap. But I saw Go, and I'm like, this is amazing.
How did the headhunter find you? Were you going to meetups again? Were you out? Were you like? Was it just a cold email that shows up in your inbox one day?
I think it was through LinkedIn. I think at that point I was registered at LinkedIn, and I think he found me there. Yeah.
You weren't
Yes.
looking.
Yes.
I mean, you
No,
weren't
I wasn't
looking
looking.
for. I mean, you
No.
were happy. I mean,
Yeah. It was sort of. I wanted to work. I wanted to work with Go professionally. Oh no, I was actually a bit looking, like a tiny bit. And yes, oh, I remember now. Oh, that was a long time ago. But I was looking a tiny bit because I wanted to see if there's any chance to work with Go professionally and learn on the job.
so you had
Because I,
discovered Go. So you had discovered Go in this job already, and you were like, I really want to do this full time. So you started kind of planting seeds or poking around, and this headhunter pops up.
yeah. And this headhunter pops up and said that, dude, there's a company here in Budapest who wants to work with Go and does cloud infrastructure with AWS. And I'm like, all right, sign me up. At that point, I did Advent of Code. I don't know if you know that one. It's a kind of like a puzzle site where you have like 25 days of puzzles slowly getting available as the day goes by. And I did that in Go the first year. Yeah, 50 puzzles because there are 2 puzzles per day. So I did all that in Go in order to learn more about Go.
Did you put all that stuff in a repo so you had it available for
Yeah,
people to look at? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
That was
did.
huge because now you had a resume of code that you could showcase,
Not
which is so
not the
important.
best code, but
Didn't
still.
matter.
But still
You
code.
got you solved 50 problems. Like I tell people all the time, your resume is great, but you need some form of a repo of code. It doesn't have to be beautiful; it just has to work, right?
Yes. And so I did that, and I went to the interview at Christmas. I remember, yeah, it was
Worst
this,
time to be looking for a job,
yes,
like
the
Christmas.
worst.
Everybody's away. You're
Yes,
interviewing at that time.
I'm interviewing at that time, and I got to an interview, and it went really well. Oh my God, I remember. I looked up some stuff in AWS. I had no idea about AWS, but I read the doc, and I played around with it, and I wrote a software using the Go SDK, which is called Furnace. It was nothing. It was a small thing using cloud formations to deploy code. But that's how I learn. I write stuff. I have over, I don't know, 100 or 200 repos just full of code, just writing random stuff. Like, but this is how you do it. This is how you learn. Well, I do it. And for every opportunity, I had some code already, and I went to the interview. I remember I knew nothing about AWS other than what I read in the docs and other than what I wrote with Furnace. And I had such luck that every question was right there. What I wrote or read 5 days prior to the interview, and
Hey,
I got
you gotta be good to get lucky. I learned this
yeah.
from an eighth grade English teacher. You have to be good. He would beat me in ping pong every day, and I'd say, "You lucky." He goes, "Bill, you gotta be good to get lucky."
That is true. And you have to just carpet bomb like stuff. Like, like I read this and that and that and that and that, and I put together some kind of picture. And I already understood infrastructure. I already knew what it probably meant in the background, right? So then they asked me about Route 53 or 55 or whatever it's called, and then routing and VPCs and networking and EC2s and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, sure. This, blah, blah, blah. I read that. So it was kind of like I came prepared. And I was in luck because they mostly utilize CloudFormation and EC2 instances to do stuff. And I already did that. So yeah, win for me. And win for them too, because I already understood and did that stuff. And but turns out, sadly, that company was in contact with a different company in the US called Acquia. And I started to work for them, but there was no Go. It was all PHP and Ruby, which I
Uh,
had zero ideas about PHP or Ruby at that point.
or
So I'm like, all
interest.
right, or interest. But I met a really cool guy called Balaj, who is still my best friend to this day. I actually, yeah, we are in a really good relationship. Who was like Martin for me, who pushed me constantly towards like to better yourself, to do this, you can do this, you can do that. And that's why I stayed there for like 3 years to like learn, because in the end it's all knowledge, it's all experience. Even if it's PHP, it's fine, it's still coding, it's still programming, it's still something I have to or can learn. About infrastructure, it was more AWS for me than about the PHP and about the coding. It was more about understanding infrastructure because I'm an infrastructure engineer in the end.
What makes you leave that company? I'm assuming for the company you are at now.
No, not yet. I went to, yeah.
Oh, because we're in like 20 right now, right? Like you're talking about
Yeah, I went to ArangoDB for a while, and what made me leave is
MongoDB.
Go. Yeah, ArangoDB.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's a multi-faceted database, but it has a cloud solution, and I went there for a year. I worked there for a year using Go. I went there to work in Go because eventually I wanted to work with Go, and the opportunity did never arise. Sadly, I did really enjoy working with those guys, but I wanted to go. So I quit and went to Arango. But at that point, I also spoke at events like GopherCon. I went to GopherCon 2016 or 17 or 18, something like that. I gave a little talk about robotics using Go. And so I started to like challenge myself, doing the things I'm more afraid of. And Arango was one of those things because it was intense. We were four guys, building a huge infrastructure for this database, and it was really intense. It was really like difficult. Yeah, I did that for a year, and then I had to switch because of different circumstances in my country. Payment was not so well. It's a long story, but I had to switch. However, it came the opportunity to work for Weaveworks, and Weaveworks was a company I was following because of Kubernetes for years now, and I really wanted to work for them actually, but I did never get the chance until like a couple months ago. Alexis, I got into contact with Alexis and talked that, hey, I want to work for you.
Were you doing any Kubernetes before this job, or is this job your first kind of?
Arango, the
Yeah.
first with Kubernetes. Arango was with the first with Kubernetes, yes.
Okay. Okay. All right.
With
So you
like
did a.
intensive Kubernetes operators, all the jazz, like all the intricate small pieces, because the database had to work at all cost. So it was really intense.
Well, God, running anything stateful in Kubernetes is going to bring your knowledge level up quite a bit, right? I mean, it's really a stateless environment at the end of the day. So
So I was intense, and then Alexis wrote me back that yeah, sure. I'm like, oh, whoa, okay, let's do this. So, like, I did not expect that.
if you don't ask, you can't receive, right? I say it all the time. If you
Right,
do not ask, you
right,
cannot
yes,
receive.
yes. So I just had to ask, and I got an amazing interview with Maz. Um, and she asked me, and Maz and Jake asked me a bunch of questions about Go, about distributed systems, of which I learned at that point a lot about with Arango, and also doing courses. Like again, distributed systems was something I did not understand and I was afraid of. So yeah, I'm gonna get a that this is what I'm going to do now. So I did the MIT course on distributed systems, and it's a really awesome course. Like it's really granular. It really goes into the details. Explains Raft, explains a lot about distributed locking and whatnot. So it was a really amazing course, and I did the whole thing of it. And then went to do this interview already prepared. So I was in luck again, answering some good questions, and I got the job, and it's amazing. I feel really happy here, and it's a really understanding environment with lovely people who are like-minded than myself.
And you're setting yourself up really for the next 5 to 10 years with this tech because it's not going anywhere, and you're going to be one of those people that just really understand it inside and out.
Yeah, and this is why I wanted to do this. Like at Weaveworks, we are now building something to make developers' lives easier. We are working on a package management for Kubernetes, which will tackle just the problem that you just described and my brother described. Like how do I get my stuff into this thing and then not worry about it at all? and this package management will do that for you. You just describe what you want to have, where it is, and then it's kind of like a package management tool, but for Kubernetes, and using Flux, which is an amazing tool that they also wrote. So it will be declarative, it will live in it will be versioned, it will live in Git. So it's really awesome, and I see the future in that once it's done, it will be an amazing piece of work, and I really hope that it's all open source. Like everything that Weaveworks does is open source, and that's another thing I really love about this company. So it's all open source. So I really hope that it will help developers' lives. It will make their lives easier, and understanding Kubernetes.
Yeah, I mean, I I know my biggest problems is like, fine, I deployed it. How do I get to my logs? How do I open up a port to my database, which is sitting over there? Like, the networking is a nightmare. Accessing my logs is a nightmare. Like, you can't just solve the deployment problem. Great, I got 3 instances of this service running somewhere. Like, now I need access. Like, these are hard problems. I really don't want to be working on them. I'm glad you're working on them. But that's that's the heavy lift, is that last piece. Like, give me secure access to all that. So this is amazing, dude.
Absolutely.
Like, amazing where how you started out and now kind of where you are, and you're married. You had to marry her, right? You got married.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
That was it. Yeah, you got married. um, Brilliant. This is really brilliant stuff, dude. I really appreciate you sharing this story, because I just kind of love where it went. I love the idea that I'm afraid of it. So it made me think, like, I want to take you in front of a haunted house and have you say, no, I'm afraid to go in there, but now I've got to go in. Like, right? Like, I got to go in no matter what happens. Like, this is it. So I kind of love that. I love that philosophy. But when you're saying, like, I'm afraid of it, so I'm going to do it, I mean, I have to imagine it takes some coaxing, right? Like, you just don't immediately say, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm sure, like, you fight with that for a couple of days in your head before you finally say, stop this. Like, let's just go for it.
Yes and no. It depends. Sometimes I'm able to overcome it easily. Like sometimes it's like I write it down and then understand that, okay, this is what I'm afraid of, so let's do it, and then I immediately start doing it. But sometimes, yes, it takes a bit of like, okay, okay, let's do this. I can do this. Like my brother did this, I can do this too, or whoever did this already, so I can do this too. Like it really took these people in my life to like make me understand that I'm if I want if I really want it, or set my mind to it, then I'm able to do it.
I like what you're saying better, like, since I'm afraid of it, I'm going to do it. But I've always told people, you've never failed in anything you've really tried to do. Like, so why do you think you're going to fail now? Like, this is the way I've always thought about it in my head. Or, you've never really failed. Like, of course you made mistakes, and of course this didn't work out. But at the end of the day, like, you had success. Like, why do you think now you're going to fail all of a sudden? Like, you're not, if you put the time and effort in it. But I love the idea that since I'm afraid of it, that's almost a mandate that I've got to now do this. Like, I'm not going to let that hold me back. I'm never going to lose that. That's going to be with me now for the rest of my life.
Cool, man. I'm really glad that I could add something to this.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you're really happy where you are, and you're working on problems, and you're coding in Go, and this is great. Okay, so we're just about out of time. So a couple of things. Um, if anybody wants to reach out to you after listening to this, what is the best way that they can reach out? We'll put it in the show notes too, but if they're listening right now, what's the best way to reach out to ask you any questions?
The best way is really via email. Like I'm on some platforms like Reddit or Twitter. I can also answer on Twitter. I usually notice it pretty like a day or two. I notice that someone pinged me. but email is usually like
What's your Twitter handle?
it's a Scarlso. Skarlso.
Oh, I think we need a whole nother podcast for that name.
Villainous names, right?
Yeah. Naming is hard. There we go.
It
Okay, so we got that. All right. Thank you, dude, for this time. This was awesome. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me.
All right. So this is Bill Kennedy with the Ardan Labs podcast. Thank you for joining me and Gergely, and hope to see everybody again real soon.